As the pilot of land-based aircraft, you may have wondered what it would be like to perform takeoffs and landings from one of the many lakes and rivers that you pass by on most every flight. With a seaplane rating, these waterways can become runways, and there is no better time to find out more about this rating than right now. This is Sporty's What You Should Know About Transitioning to Seaplanes, a program that allows land-based pilots to take the plunge to get their feet wet in the world of water flying. Your host is Rob Ryder, an instrument-rated pilot who is a real aviation enthusiast. Rob serves as announcer for various air shows and also hosts many other Sporty's video programs, including the What You Should Know Private Pilot series. Along the way, a number of noted seaplane instructors will demonstrate the maneuvers described as we travel to Jack Brown's seaplane base in Winter Haven, Florida, for a taste of the adventure that seaplanes can provide. Now, let's join Rob as he begins to explain what you should know about transitioning to seaplanes.
Hi, I'm glad that you could join us. This program will present a number of generic concepts and procedures for flying seaplanes. It is not a substitute for competent instruction or the procedures outlined by the manufacturer of your seaplane. Your instructor should explain the procedures and policies unique to your aircraft and local operation. Follow the guidance of your instructor and your manufacturer.
While this program is designed primarily for land-based pilots who would like to learn to fly seaplanes, it can also be an integral part of any seaplane training program. For students without aviation experience or single-engine land pilots who may be a bit rusty, we'd recommend that you review Sporty's complete flight training course for the private pilot. Learning to fly a seaplane is a lot of fun, but it's also serious business. Don't take the freedom afforded by this rating for granted. While most of your seaplane flying may be recreational and conducted in good weather, you should still approach your training and every flight thereafter with a deliberate and professional attitude. For a pilot with an airplane single-engine land rating on his pilot certificate, adding an airplane single-engine C rating is classified as the addition of a class rating. Adding a class rating to your pilot certificate at the same grade of certificate or adding privileges equivalent to a lower grade of certificate means that the FAA allows certain requirements to be waived. The FAA does require the pilot to be trained in and demonstrate proficiency in the areas of operation appropriate to the rating, but the minimum hour requirements do not need to be met in the class of aircraft. The FAA requires the pilot to be trained in the knowledge areas that apply to the rating, but no FAA knowledge test is required. The pilot must pass a practical test for the rating, but tasks and areas of operation that were demonstrated for a previous rating do not require testing. The examiner may ask to see these previously demonstrated items if he so chooses, so the pilot should be proficient in these as well.
The obvious difference between land and sea airplanes is in the landing gear. Landlocked airplanes have either conventional or tricycle gear. Seaplanes may have separate floats or a boat-shaped hull. These may be restricted to water landings only, or they may be of amphibious design to allow landing on water or a solid runway.
A float plane will typically have two separate floats. A flying boat or hull-type seaplane will use the airplane's hull for flotation. The design of a single float from the pair and the design of the hull for a flying boat are very similar in shape and appearance. To simplify the discussion, we'll take a look at a single float that is designed strictly for water use.
Beyond the design characteristics, we'll refer to floats throughout this program when discussing the point of contact with the water, as this type of seaplane is more common than the hull type. Most of the procedures apply to both types. If you're earning your seaplane rating in a flying boat or an amphibious design, your flight instructor will cover the differences with you.
A float must be constructed of sturdy and lightweight materials. It must be strong enough to take the abuse of water travel and anticipated takeoff and landing forces, yet light enough to prevent the complete loss of useful load. It must be shaped to be efficient both on the water and in the air. Modern designs are a good compromise between hydrodynamic and aerodynamic efficiency. The float must have at least 4 watertight compartments of equivalent volume. These compartments must prevent the float from sinking and prevent the airplane from capsizing if the integrity of any 2 compartments is compromised. Most modern float manufacturers design their floats with more than 4 compartments. This allows them to meet the 2 flooded compartments requirement with a smaller, lighter, and stronger float. The watertight bulkhead separating the compartments also provides structural strength to the float. Each compartment must have a bilge pump opening. A tube runs from the opening to the lowest point in the compartment. This allows water that is seeped into the compartment to be removed during pre-flight. Cleats for securing the seaplane to a dock or other mooring are found on top of the float. The forward bow has a rubber bumper on the outside of the float to provide protection during docking. A keel strip runs under the center of the float, also known as the keel of the float, from this bumper to the step. The step is a longitudinal break in the keel line approximately midway down the float, just behind the airplane's CG. It's designed to create turbulence in the water so that the float does not stick to the water. Smooth water has adhesive properties. The step decreases this adhesion and allows the airplane to rotate slightly when takeoff speed is attained. Without the step, the float would likely not leave the water. Behind the step, a small fin-like structure known as the skeg is installed. The skeg provides directional stability at higher speeds and gives some rigidity to the rear or the stern of the float. The chine is the intersection of the bottom and the side of the float. Attached to the chine you will find the spray strip, or rail. This rail helps cut down on the water spray that reaches the propeller and reduces propeller erosion and damage from this spray. Sister keelsons, or hydrodynamic lift boosters, will be found forward of the step between each chine and the keel strip. These strips provide additional strength and channel the water toward the step for a reduction in the time it takes to get the float up on the step. This reduces the time and distance required for takeoff. A retractable water rudder will be found at the stern of the float. This device is lowered for taxiing on the water and is controlled via the same rudder pedals as the air rudder. Spreader bars are found between the 2 floats and help to maintain the alignment of the floats. Forward, diagonal, and aft struts attach the floats to the airplane. Bracing wires are used to tighten the floats and fine-tune their adjustment, or rigging. Some airplanes are designed from the outset to be seaplanes. Others are land-based designs that have been converted for water use.
Airplane conversions may only require the addition of ST seed floats and associated water controls, but many require other modifications. These modifications are known collectively as the seaplane kit.
Seaplane kits may include strengthening the fuselage, the addition of extra corrosion proofing, and flight control surface drain holes. The kit may require the installation of an auxiliary fin or sub-rudder below the tail to help restore directional stability lost because of the floats. This stability loss results from the floats introducing additional vertical surface area forward of the CG. The aircraft may also be fitted with lifting rings for hoisting the aircraft so that the floats may be installed. The addition of floats to an existing land design does bring some penalties and changes to the performance of the aircraft. The added weight and drag of the floats will reduce the useful load and the cruise speed of the aircraft. Takeoff and climb performance will suffer, and you can expect to find an increase in corrosion when compared to its typical land-based cousin.
The yaw characteristics and turns may change due to the introduction of the floats into the airstream, but these penalties can be a small price to pay when compared with the fun and freedom that floats can provide.